One thing that flippers have a hard time understanding is just when they look at a leather couch, like what kind of leather, is this quality leather, is this...
Three of my flippers, I would say they're primarily buying leather and reselling it. And they're dealing with higher end brands and knowing the right brands to buy.
The cost of materials for top grain leather is so high. As you said, could be 4 animals to create one sectional, right? And there's a real significant cost to that. And if you're paying that much for materials, it doesn't make sense to put it on one of these cheap Amazon Wayfair frames, right?
Brands that I've worked with for many years, and I find when a customer comes to me that they're likely going to have good leather are...
When I work with my flippers, a lot of them struggle to sell items at a higher price point. They're selling a lot on Facebook Marketplace, and of course their consumers are price conscious. But one thing I've learned in business is that... Welcome back to another edition of the Couch Pod. Today we have a very special guest who is about to blow your mind when it comes to flipping leather couches. Chris Repp, a second-generation leather professional with over 30 years of experience cleaning, repairing, maintaining leather furniture. And he's worked with some seriously high-profile clients. Think of Lockheed Martin, the Baltimore Ravens, Johns Hopkins Hospital. But he's also the go-to guy for everyday couch flippers. In fact, Chris currently works with 3 couch flippers in Baltimore, helping them turn undervalued products into profit-making gems. And best of all, today he's going to share his knowledge about what leather products work, how to repair them. He's even put together a list of products that you can buy to start you in your leather flipping journey, in addition to a comprehensive online course that you can purchase to level up your furniture flipping business. If you're ready to learn what makes leather furniture so valuable, how to spot the best deals, you're going to want to stay tuned for the rest of this pod. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure thing. Thanks, Charles.
First off, I want to dig into your background. It's not every day that you meet someone with so much depth in working with leather, and it's second generation for you, in fact. So could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the game?
Sure, absolutely. My dad started this business on Long Island, New York. He did this with other guys, and they actually were learning how to provide for themselves and developed a lot of the technology and skills and chemicals that are used. At that time, it was restaurant booths and vinyl in automobiles, things like that. And then some of the guys learned more about leather and migrated a little bit to furniture. So that was New Life Service Company. And when he started that, and then other guys with him, he moved to Pennsylvania and settled the family there in the 80s. And as I got a little older, I came back to the business. I did some other things in college, but then ended up getting involved and helping him out and learning the trade. Gosh, now it's 25 or 30 years that I've been fixing leather furniture and, like you said, going to airports for private aircraft and commercial spaces, stadiums, things like that that have leather, and just lots of experience. And now with actually, for the people that may not know this side of technology, back when we started, we didn't even have digital pictures. So I had to go on site and look at things. But nowadays, I get dozens and dozens of pictures of leather furniture every week, and I'll say yes or no on whether I can repair it. And I find that also, that knowledge can be helpful for someone who's looking to buy leather furniture. I can do almost all my estimating from pictures, and I think that can tell you a lot about whether leather's worth it and worth reselling as well.
That's super interesting, because I know one thing that flippers have a hard time understanding is just when they look at a leather couch, like what kind of leather, is this quality leather? Is this worth putting my time and energy into? How much am I going to work with the material to fix it and make it presentable? So I definitely want to dig into that. But first, maybe we could go a little bit more high level. And in your experience, what does today's market demand look like for leather couches? Like, would you say that like leather is something that commands a premium, or how does it compare to the other kinds of furniture that our flippers might buy?
Sure. I would say, yeah, definitely a premium, especially if you buy the right brand. It was interesting. I listened to your interview with Alec, and you mentioned that you didn't have a lot of other flippers that were dealing with leather. But all three of my flippers, I would say they're primarily buying leather and reselling it. And they're dealing with higher end brands and knowing the right brands to buy. And those tend to bring the highest premium for them for reselling. So yeah, leather is definitely what I see a lot of.
Why do you think leather is considered a premium product or typically more expensive than your average couch that might be made out of fabric?
Yeah, it's usually quality construction, especially. I mean, there are cheaper leather products out there now, but if you're looking at good brands, you're going to get quality construction in the frame and in the cushioning and everything else. And then the leather itself is going to be more quality. It's going to last longer with proper maintenance. It can last decades and decades. And even just the spaces I go into, like I said, I do private jets, and when a $20 million private jet is going to have leather in it. It's not going to have fabric in the private seating areas. And people just know leather is the product that is sort of more premium. I'll do in the Ravens Stadium, for instance, I did the owner's suite and everything in there is leather. It just sort of speaks of a premium product, and people kind of know that. Yeah, I think it's a great product to resell.
Absolutely. And for the audience members that may not know, leather is a high-end material, right? And so the price per square yard for top grain leather compared to like microfiber, could you speak a little bit about that?
There's some knockoffs that are trying to compete price wise with those lower end things like bonded leather and biecast leather and leather vinyl match. We could get into some of those terms that I think that would help flippers to know what to stay away from. But if you're talking about top grain leather, you're buying hides, like a complete hide from a cow, and a leather sofa might have two or three hides of leather in it. Has to be a certain quality leather, the number of scars and the consistency of the grain, those kind of things to make a quality leather hide to start with. And then you're spending hundreds of dollars on each hide. And gosh, a sectional could be 4 or 5 hides worth of leather. So again, that's just the base cost. We're expecting in a lot of these cases, they're using better quality for the framing materials and all that. On the other end, the retail price can be higher. But the odd thing is, I don't know if your flippers have found this, but especially the one that I work with in Baltimore that has a retail location, North Home Furnishings, they tell me all the time that when people are getting rid of even like Restoration Hardware or Pottery Barn, high-end quality leather like we've been talking about, they're still only giving it away for pennies. But they know the retail of that and they can then mark it up significantly. So yeah, the quality is certainly there, and the prestige of leather allows you a lot of room.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the ideas here, I think, is that the cost of materials for top grain leather is so high. As you said, could be 4 animals to create one sectional, right? And there's a real significant cost to that. And if you're paying that much for materials, it doesn't make sense to put it on one of these cheap Amazon Wayfair frames, right? It's a way of inferring the quality of the entire piece that you're working with. So another thing that you just mentioned is that you're always on the lookout for good brands. So what are brands that flippers should be on the lookout for when they're contemplating buying a leather couch?
Okay, so brands that I've worked with for many years, and I find when a customer comes to me that they're likely going to have good leather, are Hancock and Moore, Our House, Arhaus, certainly Pottery Barn, Restoration Hardware. One or two of my flippers that I work with buy probably majority of Restoration Hardware because they have really good leather quality. Hickory is one, Ethan Allen, Century Leather is another one. Crate and Barrel sells, and one of the actual original ones, Ralph Lauren, again, those are going to be really high-end pieces, but if you can get one for a good price, there's a lot of room in them. So those are just some of the brands that I think are going to really carry a premium just by the nature of that brand name.
I see. And of the brands that you mentioned, let's say 80% of the time, if it is a leather product from that brand, you can expect that there is a certain level of quality there.
Yes, in original purchase, it was definitely quality. Now, I have to say, I've seen those brands with oil stains in the headrest and cat scratched to heck, really badly worn out, and I wouldn't suggest buying some of those. So it can still be made a product you don't want to purchase, but yeah, you're starting with something great, and if you make a good decision about the quality that still exists in that piece, then I don't think you can go wrong with those brands.
Perfect. And conversely, are there any brands that you would stay away from, products that you've seen where it's just not up to snuff?
In our area, there's like a couple of brands, like Value City is a brand that is in our area. IKEA is hit and miss, that sometimes that's okay. I mean, obviously they've worked to bring the price point way down on those, but a lot of times they're using top grain leather, so it's not terrible, but it's not going to be certainly in that prestige brand level. And a lot of stuff online now that you're finding, like Costco's and Wayfairs and different places like that, are selling. I honestly, more than a brand, am going to do a quick Google search of the retail price point. And I even recommend to my customers, I want people to buy new in a middle range. So for a couch, that might be $4,000 or $5,000, which seems like a lot. The lifespan of that couch is going to be significantly longer than a full leather couch that's in the $2,000 to $2,500 range. So the tip there is not necessarily the brand, but the price point. If they're getting a price point for a full couch or even a sectional in the $2,000 and under range, I'm suspicious of the quality of that leather.
Hey, really quick before the podcast, did you know Ivy Flip has created the best couch flipping app in the world? With our newest update, we have the fastest marketplace search times. This means you'll get to listings way before your competition. With Ivy Flip by your side, you can dominate your market. Not to mention, we also help with cross-listing and inventory management. If you're serious about your couch flipping business, you need this app. Try the app today and get a free trial. Just search Ivy Flip in the Google Play Store or iOS App Store, or click the link in the description now.
Yeah, I think this is such an incredible point, because when I work with my flippers, a lot of them struggle to sell items at a higher price point. They're selling a lot on Facebook Marketplace, and of course their consumers are price conscious. But one thing I've learned in business is that you don't always want to be leading with price, right? If you're leading with price, and that's the only reason someone should do business with you, that's just a race to the bottom. But if you can make it about value, this is a quality piece. It's the centerpiece of your home. It's going to be there for years and years to come. Now you can make it about value. You can buy this cheaper couch and you're going to have to replace it in a year or two, or you could buy this top grain leather couch from a great brand. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's something that's worthwhile. It's going to last. And so could you give us an idea of like what the difference in lifespan might be between like a cheap leather couch or a cheap couch and a really quality leather couch?
Yeah, absolutely, very significant, especially in some of these new sort of blended products, bonded leather or leather vinyl match, or even just a low end leather. Because I'm a repairman, I get the pictures in 2, 3, 4 years of people's experience with a couch that might look great on the showroom floor, but in a few years it starts to crack and peel and wear significantly. So most leather isn't just the hide put on on a frame. It's been finished. It's been added color dyed into it, and then color added on the surface. And the quality of those processes of finishing and clear coat protection can vary significantly. So it's usually when you start to see damage, it's that color coat and clear coat that are peeling and cracking. And on the lower end products, I'll get so many emails of pieces, especially in the high wear areas, like if you're leaning your head against it or your arms are leaning on the arms. Usually I can walk in a room at someone's house and tell the best spot for the TV, where someone always sat. And if it's a lower end leather product, it's starting to wear, maybe even fade and lose color in 2 or 3 years. But those brands that I mentioned before, with proper care and maintenance, 10, 15, 20 years, they actually, in my opinion, can look better. They can start, the term is patina, they start to get a little crackly and darker and lighter and things like that. But if you're a leather connoisseur, if you like that kind of leather, then it can continue to age really well.
Kind of like a well-worn horse saddle.
Yeah, jacket or something like that. Yeah, yeah.
You've mentioned throughout our conversation different kinds of leather, bonded, vinyl mix. Maybe you could give our flippers a quick rundown of, the array of different leather types out there and maybe how to spot the differences between them.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So on the one end is vinyl. So that's not leather at all. I would put microfiber in this category. Or ultra suede. That's another term. All three of those are not actual any animal hide at all. They're just a synthetic product. Now, vinyl isn't necessarily awful. I do a lot of commercial spaces that have vinyl just because it can be durable. Maybe 20 years ago, it would crack quickly, but the processes and polymers and things have improved. So vinyl's not awful, but it's certainly not top grain leather. And then from vinyl, you get sort of a vinyl leather match, which it depends where you are. There's retailers that will try pretty hard to trick people, honestly, and make them think it's full leather when vinyl leather match is actually, if you sit down on a chair, where your body touches, the seat, the arms, the backrest, those are going to be actually made of leather. But then the outsides and sometimes even the legs and lower front parts are not. They're vinyl. So from vinyl leather match, you also then have sort of faux leather. There's split hide and there's bonded leather that you would put in those categories. And all you have to do is Google bonded leather and lawsuits and see that you just want to stay away from that. That's actually like particle board almost. It's like crushed up extra leather that was added, glues were added to it, and it was then resurfaced. It's just not worth going after stuff like that. Bonded leather. And then split hide is actually leather, but it's not the top of the leather hide. They've actually split through the hide and they're using a lower section of the hide, and that goes quickly too. It just doesn't have the tensile strength of the top grain. And then top grain leather. That's going to be the top best part of the top or full grain. Full grain is not as common in furniture. It's pretty thick. But top or full grain are what you're going to be wanting to look for as a product that's going to be that long-lasting leather. And then there's what they do with the hide. There's like aniline leather, which has not been finish protected almost at all. If you spill a drop of water on an aniline leather couch, it'll soak in and darken that area almost immediately. And then there's semi-aniline, then wax coated and finish coated. And I like to stay more toward the wax coated and finish. The brands I mentioned have a lot of wax coated leathers. If you run your fingernail on it, you can make a little scratch, but it does have protection. So it's not going to just stain with the slightest touch like an aniline leather would. That's pretty much across the spectrum. Stay towards the top grain. Aniline and semi-aniline can be really high price points. The odd thing about the leather furniture industry is the more high price a couch can be, sometimes the less durable it is. It's actually more delicate and stains quite easily. So the wax coated and the top grain finished leathers are the ones that I think are probably long run more durable and a better candidate for resale.
So our average flipper probably does not have a lot of experience with leather. And every day they're on Facebook Marketplace, they're on OfferUp, they're kind of sifting through what's available. And they probably come across many leather couches, but they're not in front of that couch. They can't look at the tags. And so all they have at their disposal is a picture. And so what are things to look out for that would indicate to a flipper this is potentially a good buy?
Mostly the retailers are going to give more detailed information about the leather. So if you can get the brand name and maybe the model of that couch, I would Google it and look for the manufacturer's page or the retailer's page, because they're going to have a specifications that will say it's top grain leather or it's leather vinyl match, finish protected or aniline or whatever. So if you can do a little research and find out more that way, that's good. I guess a lot of what I'm looking for is the wear patterns from my end is that, okay, so a really telltale sign that it's leather and vinyl match is that, like I said, the seat where you sit is actual leather, but a lot of times even the panel just beside and just in front of that piece of leather is vinyl. And what tends to happen is that will get vertical cracks. So the vinyl will start to split, and you can see it if you zoom in a little bit on the seat cushion and just in front or aside of that, then you know you have vinyl and not all leather. But other than that, I'm looking at pictures of just leather. So leather tends to wear, the color will wear a little bit. It'll get a little crackly and worn looking, but it's not going to split super easily like bonded or synthetic leather will. So when I see like cracks and splits and things, I know it's not real leather. But honestly, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this 30 years, but there are some synthetics that are pretty good. They can be tough to tell just from pictures. So looking it up online and finding out that manufacturer's spec sheet is really going to be helpful. And then just getting to know your brands. And, I mean, yes, you're not going to be in front of that couch, but if you've seen 10 other restoration hardware couches, you'll know that that is a real leather couch. And you might ask about the scratch test, because I really do like that waxed leather. If you see little scratch marks that look lighter than the regular leather color, or even ask the seller, if you run your nail on the edge of this in an inconspicuous area, does it make a little mark? And that means you have a leather that's been wax coated, and that's a good sign of a quality leather.
I see. So cracks and splits, red flags. If you can scratch it and there's like a small, like kind of faded indentation, but not like scuffing of the material, that's a green flag.
That's a good thing, yeah. And the finish protected leather won't scratch at all, so that can be fine. And the wax coated is just a little surface scratch, which I can tell you guys later is easy to get out with waxes and buffing, and so it's not a problem at all.
Are there any other overt red flags? Like if you saw this on a couch, you'd just be like, you need to stay away from that.
Yeah, I mentioned oils. So even when in my restoration business, when I run into a couch, no matter how nice of quality, that has started to get oily, which means darker, or surprisingly, it can also be lighter, because the oils can take off the top layer of finish and you end up with a lighter color. And you're looking for that in the headrest area and on the fronts of the arms. It's like an iceberg kind of, because usually when those oils have happened, it's a little bit on the surface, but the oils have migrated down into the leather. So even wider down on the headrest and the arm, you're going to have trouble, and it's more susceptible to splitting and cracking and becoming something that you might get away with selling, but then there might be complaints in the near future. So you want to stay away from those oils. There definitely can be a problem. Other than that, there's a lot of cracking if it's superficial. So when it comes to crackling or color fading, I'm always wanting to touch it. So I can't touch it. I ask the customer, if you run your hand over the seat of this couch, which I've seen shows some maybe a slight discoloration or crackling, does it feel rough? And if it starts to feel really rough, that means what's called pH damage. That means it's not just the top layer that's worn, it's actually the leather itself that's cracking. So that's what makes it feel really rough. But if they say it's still pretty smooth, but it does have some surface cracking, well, we can address that with balms and waxes. So you're looking for the difference between a really rough feeling cracked leather and a more superficially worn that still feels pretty smooth. And it can actually be a great buy, because like Alex said, I actually emailed him and just said hello, and I said, I'll hire you someday if you ever decide to switch businesses, because he's right. I mean, if you can get the right balms and buff them into just a surface cracked leather, you can really bring it up and it looks significantly better and in a long lasting way. So stay away from those deeper cracking is what I would say.
So in addition to checking the manufacturer information, if that product is still listed on their website, and some of these visual cues, a lot of couches come with tags. Is there anything that they should be looking for on the tag?
I don't know. A lot of the tag information that's legally has to be there is about like the stuffing and the fire resistance of different materials in it. I don't find the tags are super helpful. Sometimes there's a company, Leather Master, that got deals with different manufacturers, and they'll put a P for protected or an A for aniline leather, and it's usually you lift the cushion. If the cushion is removable, it's on the decking, and those can be helpful, but I don't see them a ton anymore. I don't know that tags are the kind of information, at least from what I'm experiencing, that I'm looking for to really assess a leather.
Understood. So we have done a pretty comprehensive dive into what kind of products might be worth buying, what to stay away from, what are green flags, etc. Now I would love to start establishing a process for if this is your first time working with a leather couch, how do you go from A to Z, like assessing what repairs need to be made, prepping the couch, executing the repairs. Could you give us an explanation of that entire process?
Obviously, assessing, we've talked about, you want something that's, in my opinion, on more the wax coated or the finish coated leather. It doesn't have any rips, doesn't have any major cracking or peeling. Tim, I think it was, mentioned a good point about the smell. Cat damage and smoke damage. There are some smell issues that can really be a challenge. I honestly don't find it's because of the leather. I think it's the smells get further down to this in between the leather and down into the stuffing and the other fabric parts. So smell assessment is actually pretty important. Also, a musty smell, mold can be very difficult. I have some product suggestions on getting it off the surface of leather. But again, you got to worry about whether it's gotten beyond that surface into the frame and the cushioning. So if it passes the visual and the smell test and things like that, if it has that minor superficial cracking where you can run your hand across it and it's still pretty smooth, it can look unappealing to someone, but it's actually not that difficult to bring that up significantly. So if that's the assessment you've made, it's a good brand, it's got that superficial damage to it. Even surface scratches are often really easy to remove with the right process. Then you're good. I would go ahead and take a shot on that. And like I said, at least I don't flip, but the flippers I know, people are, getting rid of stuff, and they can, many times my guy at North Furniture said, this couch retails for $8,000 and somebody sold it to me for $500 because they were, their designer said it's time to change or whatever. So yeah, you can definitely get a really good deal there. And then I guess once you get a hold of it, I would say a correct cleaning process, whether for that particular type of leather, cleaning over. I don't usually deal with like the vacuuming and things but that makes a lot of sense. There's detail brushes you can get that I can put in my product link for you guys that will help you get down into the cracks and crevices and clean those out. And then just some color correction. Usually there's like wax coats or tinted waxes, things like that after you've cleaned it, if you buff in some of those waxes, you can bring it up significantly. Alex mentioned full color correction. If you're dealing with like a finish coated leather where the color is wiped out, it can be pretty difficult. I mean, he's doing some high level work there to get those colors back. But if it's just that surface cracking and it's the wax coated leather, you can add wax to it and just buff it in there. It can cover nicely without having to have like this spot on eye for color matching. So yeah, you're redoing that surface. I would probably end with a conditioning or wax coat. If you buff in some wax after you've done the cleaning and some color correction and waxing it to kind of bring the sheen up and get everything in nice shape, then I think at that point you have something that is going to, as you guys, I guess take pictures and, it's going to be appealing to look at. And then when the person shows up, it's going to also be quite appealing at that point.
Interesting. So with every restoration or repair, you should start with the clean surface. Clean the product to the best of your ability, vacuum. Is there anything we should know about cleaning a leather couch that is unique from, because with a lot of these upholstered products or like the fabric couches, people are extracting them. And I imagine you don't want to do that with leather, right?
Right. No extractors and steam cleaning. Again, I would stay away from. I don't think that wet heat is good for leather. It can create mildew problems in the future. So yeah, you're mostly hand cleaning. And what I tell my customers and do myself in my business is it's not as much about the product as is about the supplemental tools that you use with the product. So I can recommend 5 or 6 leather cleaners on Amazon, and all of them are going to be fine and do a pretty good job. But when you have leather, you have graininess, right? So there's actually depth to it. And when it gets stains, and especially lighter colored leathers, it's like the dirt getting down into those grains. So use the best cleaner in the world, and if you just wipe over it with a rag, you're not going to get the dirt down in those grainy areas. But there's some simple tools that if you apply the cleaner to those tools first and then put that on the seats that look kind of dingy and dirty, you can make a significantly better result. And so 2 examples of that. Magic erasers. They're actually, the basic one has no chemicals. It doesn't have like Clorox or anything. It's just a sponge. And if you put leather cleaner on that sponge and you wipe the whole surface of a seat cushion, especially like a off-white color that looks kind of dingy, you can make a significant improvement. So you put the cleaner on the magic eraser, wipe it down, and then wipe back over it with a cloth. And I have quite a few videos that show like I did like half the seat, and you can see a significant difference just with that. And then a second tool that is easy to get on Amazon is what's called a makeup exfoliating glove. So you just put a plastic glove on your hand, and then you put these exfoliating gloves on, put the leather cleaner on that exfoliating glove, and if you do the same buffing process, and it just has like a little tiny bit of grit on it, and it gets down in those cracks and crevices and the grain of the leather, and it draws out a ton more dirt. Wipe that down, and again, you have a really significantly improved cleaning process over what someone might be able to do with just wiping it down.
Super interesting. So leather, it's skin, right? It's hide. Just as our skin has these little cracks and crevices, these textures, that would be difficult to get to with just a regular towel, let's say. Having a quality leather cleaner, and there are probably a lot out there, as you mentioned, we'll drop some links in the description below, combined with something that's able to get into those cracks and crevices, whether it's the exfoliating glove or a magic eraser, or even like a detailed brush, like you mentioned earlier, would be one of the key things in starting with the leather restoration.
Yeah, that's actually the case. It's pretty easy, and you don't want to go too abrasive, but those things that I mentioned are actually not abrasive on leather. When I'm talking to a consumer about regular maintenance, I don't want them using a magic eraser for monthly wipe downs and cleaning. But if you're doing that once in a while and then going back over it with a conditioner or a wax coating to protect, you're not going to harm the leather, and it's great.
Would you say that like in the majority of cases when doing a leather restoration that you could get a lot of the result just by doing a simple cleaning?
Yeah, you can get significant results. Again, if you're assessing the leather and it's in good shape. I do like that next step after cleaning is finding like a wax or a balm that has maybe a little bit of tint to it. So you can dark brown or light brown or blue or red or whatever. You can get tinted waxes and you buff those in. Usually when you see like the amazing before and after on YouTube or whatever of consumers doing that, they're doing a good cleaning process, which is significant, but then they're also using some wax with a little bit of a tint to it. And then finishing that stage of the process is really when it usually pops. I max colors, I do filler repairs, all the stuff that I have to do is a whole different thing. But without any of those skills, you can do a significant improvement with good cleaning and the tinted waxes just to bring up the luster of the leather. Yeah.
Absolutely. So helping bring it back to more of its original condition just by cleaning. So a basic cleaning can do a lot to restore the original luster of a leather couch. But from there, we can use some more advanced techniques. And you've mentioned waxes, balms, fillers. And as far as I know, this is kind of where you can get a little artistic, right? Like you look at the color of the couch and you're like, I could darken it a little bit. I could give it more of this authentic look, like the patina that you were talking about. So why don't we talk about like assessing the color of the couch, matching the right kinds of waxes and balms, and just explicating that step a little bit further.
So I think for someone who's not going to become a leather professional and just is looking for the basic skills to be able to make couches look good, you're going to be wanting something that you can just add a slight bit of color to and bring it up significantly. So the tip I gave about feeling the leather, making sure any discoloration is superficial is a big deal in that case, because you can add a little bit of tinted wax and get a significant improvement. Whereas when I'm doing a job that a couch is like totally sun faded or the color's really bad, that's just the process that takes a lot more work. And the more color you apply on the surface of leather, the more it's called break. Like when you push down on it, it's stiffer to the touch, and so that could actually be a bit of a warning, because you can get a couch looking great in pictures if you apply enough of a paint color, what they would more call leather paint, and it looks great. But then when someone sits on it, it's going to start to feel stiffer, it's going to crack, it's going to wear. Whereas what I'm suggesting is the balms, tinted waxes, is better for keeping that nice leather feel and not building up too much paint to try to get it to look good again. So that's why I would suggest staying in that. That's more of a sweet spot than something that needs like significant amount of color or paint work, unless you have a relationship with a leather pro who can help do that for you.
Got it. So getting into painting leather, these are more advanced techniques.
Yeah, I think so. It's a little bit more of a danger zone for trying to sell it and have someone get a good result.
Absolutely. You're going to have to go through a lot of trial and error before you get good at leather painting.
30 years and I'm getting it.
So with the balms and the waxes, I imagine you're going to want a couple different kinds with different tints to be able to, and these balms and waxes can be quite expensive. So I know this is a sticking point for people who want to get into leather is, every situation that they come across, maybe it's a little bit different. Now they have to like up on supplies. So for someone just starting out, like what are the essentials that you'd be looking for, and how can they do some better matching of the balm to the material?
Gosh, I don't think it has to be that much. There's a product I mentioned in my links called Urad, URAD. They have 5 or 6 colors, and I think it's maybe $20 for a tub of balm, which I think would do 4 or 5 couches if they're in decent shape. And then there's sponges that are covered with fabric. They're like fabric covered sponges, and those are going to be your best tool. So you put that in the wax and you just buff that in each spot and you're done. It really is just the knowledge of it and testing it, maybe take a cushion and try it on the side a little bit, use a hair dryer to dry it a little bit, see how it looks when it fully dries. And once you get decent at that, it isn't a ton more money or equipment than that. I mean, I have like spray guns and all kinds of stuff, and you don't really need that to get pretty significant results. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm cheating when, I know the right things to do. I go into somebody's house and charge them $800 to restore their couch, and I really did something that they could have done, but they wanted to hire me. So that to me says this is something that a flipper could definitely use, and with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of practice and discernment on what to buy and what not to buy, it's a good opportunity to use a few of these balms in 4 or 5 different colors. And I think leather is, we talked about the classic sort of like way that leather has gravitas to it, but I feel like a lot of people like to stay in those browns. There's some certain colors that tend to be you can get leather in any color, but a significant amount of like the Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel and Restoration Hardware are going to be 2 or 3 shades of brown. And if you have those 3 color balms and learn how to wax them on, then yeah, you can make significant money just fixing those up.
Got it. So like, let's say the range is probably some white leather. I see white leather, some different shades of brown from lighter to darker, and then maybe a black leather here and there. So if you can cover that full spectrum with balms, like you're probably pretty solid.
Yeah, well, on the white side, the tips I gave about cleaning, the magic eraser and the exfoliating glove, 9 out of 10 times, it's just dirt that makes white leather look bad. And if you get that out and dry it, it's going to be a lot better. And yeah, black can be really easy. A black balm on a sort of faded color brings it up significantly. And then, yeah, those few browns in between, like a chestnut brown, which is more reddish. And then there's like caramel browns. And then there's the darker browns that a lot of restoration hardware and different classic leathers are going to be in. If you have those 3 or 4, you're going to get a lot of good pieces that people just feel like they want. You know, they need it for this space or whatever. And one that I didn't mention in brands, which is not a particular brand, but it's a particular style. 2 of my 3 flippers almost exclusively deal with this. It's called Chesterfield. You know it because it has a lot of buttons in the back and it has rolled arms. And I'm telling you, they make so much money flipping Chesterfields. Now, there might be a little more competition in getting those, but if you learn how to refurb those a little bit, people will pay crazy for Chesterfield looking couch.
I love how you're focusing the conversation not on the advanced techniques, which could take 30 years to learn, but the simple stuff. But if you don't know what you don't know, it can feel like a lot. It can feel overwhelming. And this is the reason why you're able to walk into someone's house and do relatively conceptually simple repair or restoration and charge $800 for it. It reminds me a lot of like the story I hear about a plumber goes into someone's house and he, goes, assesses the pipes or whatever. He hits a switch and he says, that'll be $800, please. And the homeowner's like, wait, what am I paying you for? All you did is hit the switch. And the plumber says, well, I knew what switch to flip. And I think this is perfectly analogous to leather, is perfectly analogous to business in general, is that taking the time to develop a little bit more specialized knowledge and a specialized skill set can set you apart from your peers and also create economic opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of, again, mentioning my one North Home Furnishings. I have a great relationship with them. They call me for multiple couches every month. But the truth is, they're calling me less on certain pieces because we've talked and I've given them the suggestions that I'm giving you guys. And they do some of that themselves now. So I usually charge my flippers half of what I would charge a retail customer. So they might pay me $300 to do a leather sectional or sofa for them. And that's fine. And they're happy to do that if it's a more comprehensive situation. But I also respect that their margins are their margins. So there have been cases where I said, listen, get this balm, put it on there, clean it, do what I said. And they start to do that themselves and they, save that $300, which is fine. I'm not trying to gouge anybody. And then they still call me for the more challenging jobs and I do those, but the lesser jobs they're doing themselves now basically because of this kind of information and a little bit of experience.
So it seems like the waxing and buffing step is really like the key skill set to learn if you want to get the maximum value out of a leather couch that you've purchased. Maybe you could give us a little bit more detail, like a step-by-step of after the couch is cleaned, how do you go about matching the balm and applying it and buffing it and just making sure that you're doing a good job there?
Sure. So again, it all comes back to choosing the right piece because even as a leather refinisher, I say no to a lot of jobs because I know I can't get a great result because the cracking is too deep or the leather's too worn out. So if you've picked something that is good quality leather and has that surface level cracking, which might actually fade the color quite significantly. So upon first look, it looks like, wow, this was a brown couch and now it's like all white or gray and it doesn't have a good look to it. But if it's superficial, that color, you've picked a good couch. So that's the first thing. And then once you pick that correct couch, you've cleaned the leather well, then you're just, it's almost like waxing a car. You're taking some of this sponge with the fabric cover that I mentioned, you're putting that in the wax, and you're sort of circular buffing the entire seat cushion at a time. You don't want to stop on any particular area because it can soak in and create like blotchiness where you have it real dark in one area and not as dark in another. But as long as you're pretty consistently buffing everywhere, you can get a nice even color distribution. And picking of the color even isn't that hard because it doesn't have to be exact. A lot of these leathers that we're talking about have some variation in the color. They have some light areas and some dark areas. And clients don't mind that variation. So you just have to get in the ballpark. And if you're buffing it in each section pretty consistently, you're in good shape. And again, some people really like that bomber jacket faded, worn in look. So it's just bringing some color up, bringing the sheen up a little bit with the waxing that you do that makes it happen. I guess the final step there then, you don't have to do this, but I find if I use a heat gun on a lower setting. You could even really use a hair dryer on the faster flow of air setting and just set in the wax a little bit. That's going to dry it out so it doesn't get quite as blotchy. And once you've done that, you go over it with a dry cloth, just buff it a little bit more to bring that luster fully up, and it's re-waxed.
Amazing. So I think we have a pretty solid foundation that we're working with. We've learned how to identify good opportunities for restoration and flipping, how to do a basic cleaning, doing the waxing and buffing. And just between these three items that we've discussed, you should be able to get 80% of the value. It's Pareto efficiency when it comes to leather repair and restoration. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the more advanced techniques. You've mentioned painting, you've mentioned fillers. What are some more of the unusual cases that you might come across?
Sure, especially in a flipping situation. I think cat damage is going to be pretty common. And there's different levels of cat damage that you want to be aware of because all the stuff I said about just simple waxing and adding slight colorants can apply to cat damages, but it can also not, because cats can just sort of scrape over a leather couch and make a little mark in it. And if you buff that out or add a little tint to that, it's gone. But then cats can also dig into leather and you'll see like fraying and fibers that are actually pulled out. They almost use it as a scratching post. I can give you some pictures of awful ones that I've done. And I can do that. I mean, I get sandpaper in there and fillers and stuff, and it's doable. But cat damage, I think if you're looking at it where it's not really ripping out the leather and the digs aren't super deep, you can still salvage those. Again, like the smell's important because cats can urinate on couches. You want to stay away from that. But if it's mostly just scratch marks and they're more superficial scratches, you can definitely work with that. So that's one of the, I would say DIY, but maybe a little bit more skilled to do that. You're just buffing a little bit more. You're picking ones that have cat scratches that aren't awful. Other than that, I think edges. So I actually had a customer yesterday. I've done refinishing work for him before, and he sent me a picture of a new red leather couch that he got, and the bottom corner of it had a scuff. And I actually emailed him back and said, don't pay me $200 to come out and touch that up. And I sent him a link to a little bit of red balm that he could get and touch up the corners. So mostly in transit, banging into the truck or the walls, you can get a lot of scrapes on outside edges and corners, and those are pretty easy. Again, you don't have an exact you don't have to have an exact color match. You can get a color that's close and rub it in there a little bit. maybe you can slightly buff it. And if you're buffing with sandpaper, you want like 400 to 600 grit. You don't want to use really low grits, which are for wood and stuff. And you can buff it a little bit and then add a little bit of color, and you can fix a lot of transit damage, which again is usually outside edges. So that would be the second one. Cuts and slices and things. I mean, I have techniques that aren't that hard for a slice. Somebody hit it with a X-Acto knife or something. If you can get the glue in just right and dry it and kind of pinch it down, it can be okay. But that's a little more advanced. And then if you're really interested in enjoying it, and want to go beyond the balm stage, there's the more finish protected leathers that with time, the color will actually come off and you have to repaint the leather. So that's where you're getting 4 or 5 different colors and mixing them a little bit, finding one that matches in between, and then lightly layering color back in place. And with the forgiveness that's available in leather, it doesn't have to look perfect. It can have some variation to it. You can do that. I don't think you have to have years experience to paint leather couches, but that would definitely be a little bit more of an advanced technique on getting a couch looking good.
I know there was a guy in the couch flipping community that was recommending to people that they just Brillo paint their leather couches. So maybe you could tell us the difference between like real leather painting and just doing like a Brillo job.
So they're probably dealing with the type of leather I talked about, that if you did wax coating on that and buffing, you would be in pretty good shape. So it depends what kind of leather as to whether that would even work. I use certain sponging techniques. I mean, there's times when I'm creating 2 different colors, a light brown and a purple, and I'm sponging the light brown, and then I'm going back and I'm sponging the purple, and you're creating an antique look. It's very cool, but gosh, that took a lot of years practice to get good at. And if you're just like forcing color in by using a real abrasive technique, I just don't think that's going to hold up that well. It's actually harming the hide instead of long-term improving it. So it's more a matter, if you want to get into leather painting, you want to get better at color matching. And that's the skill that takes years to get good at. Even if they send you the manufacturer's color, it's never going to be just right. You have to tweak it, learn how to do that. And you might have an eye for that. I've trained some guys that have a pretty good eye for color and can do that. And then you get the color. I would suggest not getting like spray equipment or anything. I do that. I spray couches, but you can get most of that effect by hand rubbing and sponging paint on there. I don't use a Brillo technique. I'm not sure how long-term good that would be. You just learn to match colors, practice, try in inconspicuous areas to see if you can get it right somewhere that it's not going to be noticed, and then build your confidence in doing color matching before you would do that a lot.
Absolutely. And I think one big concern with the painting is that if you're not doing a good job at the painting and not taking the right steps in preparation, that the paint's just going to rub off, right, as customers sit on the couch. So
definitely pretty quick too. In a couple months, in a month or 2, it can do that if it's the common seat area. So you can get a frustrated customer pretty quick.
Do you think there is an opportunity for flippers who get handy with leather once they have sold the leather product to their customer to offer kind of like an aftercare option? Because obviously that's big business for you.
I think that's a possibility. Again, as they get more comfortable with that, they could consider, I do like annual services or every 6 months, where I'll go back in and clean and sometimes there's people that are just busy, and again, it's not super high skill level, it's just knowledge of that particular piece, and you go back every 6 months or a year and wipe it down for them and add some conditioning cream, and they would be willing to pay for that service. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility somebody could show interest in.
Or they find their local leather repair specialist like Chris. They build up the business relationship. You're helping them identify what couches to buy and flip. And then they can also pass you referrals. Hey, this guy bought a $4,000 leather couch from me. Probably going to need some maintenance in the future. You can pass referrals back and forth.
Yeah, and even having an ongoing relationship with the leather pro. Like I said, I know the situation. I have another lady who runs her flipping business out of her house. I mean, her basement and garage are just stuffed to the ceiling with leather furniture. And she has me in often enough. She gets 3, 4, 5 pieces for me, and I'm charging her significantly less than I would charge a retail customer because I'm aware that she has to have the margin to resell that. So building that relationship with someone in my profession to help you if you don't want to do this stuff yourself, or if you have a project that's a little beyond your skill, I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. I think it makes total sense. Do the basic stuff yourself, get a relationship with a professional near you, and there can be definitely symbiotic, beneficial relationship there. You've been working with 3 couch flippers in Baltimore. Maybe you could share any success stories or stories in general that might inspire newer seasoned flippers.
The one is North Home Furnishings. It's a father and son that started it. I think they did start out of their house. They had few couches and then got some success, and then ended up buying a retail space in Hunt Valley, Maryland, which is the north side of Baltimore. And it's 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. And it's a really nice space. And I can't speak for them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing $1 million a year, because I know they've had 6-figure months. And it's been several years now, but they actually started as COVID got going. So they had an advantage there. They built relationship with interior designers and other people in the furniture industry. And yeah, they're packed full of restoration hardware, Ralph Lauren, the really high-end stuff that they're making thousands and thousands of dollars on the flip and putting not nearly that into it. So now the father and son also have 2 other employees that do the deliveries with them and, move the furniture around the showroom, are there in the space during their retail hours. I think they do like Wednesday to Sunday, 10 to 5 retail hours, and they're doing significantly well. One other thing they told me that they've had is restaurants and retail spaces like that are looking for that old sort of cool feel to them will come in and just buy 10, 15 couches from them to fit out a space. And they have a budget line item for that. So they're not haggling on each couch. I mean, they're just saying this one, this one, this one, this one. And they're making significant money dealing with a coffee bar or a cigar lounge or something like that wants to buy a bunch of really nice leather pieces. And they don't have to look perfect either. They like that sort of worn look. So yeah, they've done really well. The other girl is still out of her house, but gosh, she does great. I mean, she has so many couches and is flipping all the time. She has 2 young kids and could certainly be successful in the corporate world, but has just decided to do this flipping business. And we've built a relationship. I'll show me pictures or videos of stuff that needs done, and I'll go over to her house. I got her garage code and opening it up, and I'm fixing stuff for her. And then it's moving, and her one son is going to like a nice school now, and she definitely credits a lot of the income that they have to being able to flip couches and keep it. She's looking towards a retail space, but she really likes the flexibility of being able to do it out of her house.
Amazing. And I think there's something about these leather products, as we discussed, expensive material. It's perceived as a little bit more high end. And this is a challenge that a lot of flippers have, is they're selling oftentimes lower quality products directly on Facebook Marketplace. They don't have a brand. And so if they're trying to break into a different tier of customers, starting to have a leather specialization is something that has worked for your clients and probably could work for them.
Yeah, I definitely think so. There are a higher end group of people that are looking for leather. So it's a good option, and you can still get quite good deals on buying leather if somebody's in a position where they really want to sell it and you're willing to come pick it up or whatever, and it can work well.
So Chris, you've really peeled back the curtain on working with leather and some of the value that might be there for our audience. I know this is going to be enough for some people, but there's going to be that 10, 20% of flippers that want more information, that want just a little bit more guidance. And I know you've created an online course that gives the full insight on how to work with leather. Could you give us a glimpse of what's inside and what our flippers could expect if they were to sign up for your course?
Sure. I did that. That was actually an on-site training I did with a furniture retailer in Maryland. 2 of their warehouse techs met me at their warehouse, and we spent the day just going through from A to Z. We did a lot of identifying and cleaning leather. I did a module on color matching because that is a significant next step. Basic repairs. I did like a razor slice, that I talked to you about. That basic razor slice repairs. Actually, I had my guys that I was training do the razor repair with me just describing it to them, and they were able to successfully do it. So they did some actual repair stuff. Let's see, we did some hand sewing. I saw one of your shorts with a curved needle tip. That's exactly what I use for re-sewing stitches. I taught them that and a few more significant things, but I wouldn't say it was like deep into the refinishing woods. So I wanted these warehouse guys to be able to handle issues that they were running up against, but we did module by module how to get from A to Z in that process. And obviously with that, I'm available. So I'm responding to emails or looking at pictures or answering questions for people. I'm happy to do that. And that sort of is part of the training that I offered. It's a good course to get the ball rolling and learn more than just what we've talked about, and get going into a little bit deeper waters of finding those hidden gems that look pretty ratty, but actually have quite a bit of upside if you can do some restoring yourself.
Absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the pod, sharing your expertise. For all of our listeners who want to dive deeper, don't forget to check out Chris's online course. You're going to get personalized help. You'll get the expertise needed to make those advanced repairs and make top dollar on your flips. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you all next time.